My business partner stole our client list and tried to replace me, so I built a better company and watched his empire burn from afar. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I built my first company with someone I thought was my best friend. Ethan and I met in college, two broke dreamers sitting in a campus CAF, sketching business ideas on napkins. He was the talker, the guy who could charm a room without trying. I was the planner, spreadsheets, strategies, the one who made things work behind the scenes. Together, we thought we were unstoppable. After graduation, we rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment and turned it into our office. It smelled like burnt coffee and instant noodles, but we treated it like a Fortune 500 headquarters. We'd stay up until brainstorming campaign ideas, laughing about how one day we'd hire someone just to make our coffee. Those nights felt electric, like we were building something bigger than ourselves. Ethan was magic with clients. He could walk into a meeting with nothing but confidence and walk out with a signed deal. I admired that. I was more comfortable with the back-end designing, managing deadlines, keeping things from falling apart. We were the perfect balance, or at least, I thought we were. Our first big break came when a mid-sized tech company hired us for a rebrand. I still remember Ethan bursting through the door, grinning like we'd won the lottery. "We did it, man. We're officially in business," he shouted, handing me the signed contract. That moment, that rush, it felt like the beginning of everything. We started growing fast. A few more clients, some decent money, late-night celebrations with cheap champagne. I looked at Ethan and thought, this is it. I finally found someone I could trust, someone who believed in me the way I believed in him. But looking back now, I realized that while I was building a partnership, Ethan was building something else, a plan I couldn't see coming. The first signs of trouble didn't come as explosions, they came as whispers. Subtle shifts that, at first, I brushed off. Ethan started referring to clients as his accounts, even though I had done most of the groundwork. In meetings, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence with that charming grin, finishing my thoughts in ways that made it sound like I was just assisting him. I tried to laugh it off. "You really love being the frontman, huh?" I joked one evening while we were packing up. He smirked and said, "Someone's got to keep the show running." Man, his tone was light, but something about the way he said it made me uneasy. Soon, clients began contacting him directly, bypassing me completely. I check my inbox and find no updates, no follow-ups, no shared plans. When I confronted him about it, he waved it off. "Relax, Jude. You handle the back-end stuff. I'm just saving us both time. Back-end stuff." That phrase started to sting. At the office, I'd catch him whispering on calls, lowering his voice when I entered. He started locking his laptop, something he'd never done before. "Confidential client details," he said when I asked. I wanted to believe him. I did believe him because I didn't want to face the possibility that my best friend might be hiding something from me. Late at night, when I'd be cleaning up the workspace, I'd notice how his desk was perfectly empty. No notes, no files. Like he'd already packed his loyalty and taken it somewhere else. Still, I kept telling myself we were just growing, that maybe this was what success looked like. Distance, tension, ego. I didn't realize yet that Ethan wasn't just drifting away. He was laying the groundwork for something much worse. When we started talking about expanding, it felt like we'd made it. Our small firm was pulling in real revenue now, enough to think about hiring, maybe even renting an actual office. Ethan was ecstatic. "Man, we need to think bigger," he said, pacing the room. "New name, new structure, new brand, something investors can take seriously." He was always the visionary, so when he said he'd handle the legal paperwork for the restructuring, I didn't question it. "You're better with forms and signatures," I joked. He laughed and said, "Don't worry, I've got us covered." I remember him sliding a folder across the desk a few days later. "Just some standard documentation," he said. "It's still 50-50, just under a new LLC for tax reasons." I skimmed through the pages but didn't read them line by line. We'd built this company on trust, after all. I signed where he told me to, not realizing I was essentially handing him full control. We threw a small party that night, cheap pizza, some drinks, a toast to the future. Ethan wrapped his arm around me and said, "Here's to as the dream team," and I meant it when I smiled back. I felt proud, relieved even, like the years of sleepless nights were finally paying off. A week later, I noticed subtle changes. The company's registration emails started coming directly to his inbox. He brushed it off, saying, "Just easier to manage that way." My gut twisted, but I told myself I was overthinking it. If I'd known those signatures were the beginning of the end, I would have stopped everything right there. But at the time, all I saw was a future one. I thought we were building together. IT started with silence. Ethan stopped showing up to the office. No calls, no texts. At first, I thought he was just burned out. We'd been pushing hard for months. But by the third day, something felt wrong. I sent him a message. Hey, man, everything okay? No response. Another day passed. Still nothing. When I tried logging into our shared client dashboard, I couldn't get in. The system said my credentials were invalid. Confused, I checked our company email. My access was gone there too. Panic rose in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. I called him again straight to voicemail. The next morning, I found out what had happened. One of our biggest clients forwarded me an email and announcement from Ethan's new company. Same services, same pitch, even the same tagline we'd created together. Marketing that moves people. He'd launched it under a new name, Evolve Media, and reached out to every client we'd ever worked with. My stomach turned cold. I opened our old shared drive empty. Every project file deleted. Every client record exported. He had taken everything. I drove to his apartment that night, still half hoping there was some misunderstanding. But the lights were off, and his name was gone from the door. Just an empty space where a friend used to live. For hours, I sat in my car staring at my phone, reading his old messages. The ones where he said things like, "We're in this together forever," and "You're my brother, not just my business partner." But that brotherhood was just a mask. He didn't just betray me, he erased me. And as I stared at the dark windows of his apartment, one thought burned in my mind. He planned this for months. And I never saw it coming. After Ethan disappeared with everything, the office became a graveyard of silence. My desk still had coffee stains and sticky notes from projects that no longer existed. Each morning, I'd walk in and sit there anyway, hoping somehow it wasn't real, that maybe he'd show up, grin, and say it was all a misunderstanding. But the truth hit harder every day. I was finished. Clients stopped calling. One by one, they moved over to Evolve Media. Even the ones who'd sworn loyalty, people I'd built friendships with, ghosted me. My inbox became an echo chamber of bounced invoices and termination notices. The rent was due, the utilities sacked up, and the savings I had left barely covered food. I started sleeping on the office couch because I couldn't afford my apartment anymore. One night, a delivery guy dropped off dinner I didn't remember ordering. When I checked the receipt, it was from Ethan's favorite restaurant, the same meal we used to celebrate our first deal. I realized then that he'd weaponized nostalgia. He'd used everything we built, everything I created, and turned it into a brand for himself. I called a mutual friend, desperate for answers. "Man, Ethan said you burned out," he admitted quietly. "He told everyone you couldn't handle the pressure." My throat went dry. That's how he'd covered his tracks, painting me as the weak one while he took the credit. I sat in the dark that night, staring at the empty whiteboard that once held our goals. The words "future projects" were still written across the top. I grabbed the eraser and wiped it clean. My hands trembled, my heart numb. For the first time since we started, I had nothing left, no clients, no money, and no reason to believe I'd ever recover. But rock bottom has a strange way of preparing you for what comes next. I hit my lowest point in the months that followed. My days blurred together, coffee that tasted like metal, cold takeout boxes piling up beside my desk, and a silence so heavy it felt alive. I was just surviving, not living. The office became my shelter and my punishment at the same time. To make rent, I picked up freelance gigs for small local businesses, logos, websites, ad copy. Each time I sent an invoice, I'd see Evolve Media ads pop up online, slick and polished, flaunting the same designs I'd built from scratch. Ethan was thriving, expanding, hiring staff, posting photos from conferences. He'd become the face of young entrepreneurship, while I was barely keeping my lights on. One night, I scrolled through social media and saw him in a photo with one of our first clients, the tech company that launched us. They were laughing, holding champagne. The caption read, "To rebuilding better partnerships." My stomach twisted. I shut the screen off, but the image stayed burned into my mind. I started questioning everything, my skills, my worth, even my sanity. Maybe he was the real talent. Maybe I was just the background guy who got lucky. The thoughts ate at me until I couldn't sleep. Then one night, while clearing old files from a dusty hard drive, I stumbled across something: the original campaign folders. My designs, my notes, my creative blueprints. All of it. proof that I built the backbone of everything Ethan stole. I sat there, staring at those files, trembling. For the first time in months, anger burned hotter than despair. That night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't done. Not yet. That night, staring at those old project files, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. All that anger, humiliation, and exhaustion crystallized into one thought. I'm taking back what's mine. I didn't have money or a team anymore, but I had skills and experience Ethan could never fake. I reached out to a few small business owners I'd met over the years. "Hey," I wrote. "I used to run a marketing firm, maybe you've heard of it." Most didn't reply, but one message stood out. A guy named Mason, who ran a startup I'd pitched years ago. He replied, "I heard about what happened. Let's talk." We met in a tiny CF with flickering lights and chipped mugs. Mason leaned across the table. "Ethan reached out to us last month," he said. "But honestly, his work doesn't have your touch. We want you." That single conversation reignited me. I started freelancing again, one client, then two, then five. I worked from that same cramped office Ethan had abandoned, using the same cracked laptop, rebuilding from ashes. My days were long, my nights even longer. But it didn't matter. Every new contract felt like a piece of myself returning. Clients began referring me through word of mouth, people who'd left Evolve Media because something just felt off. I never spoke badly about Ethan. I didn't need to. His work spoke for itself, for the first time since everything fell apart. I wasn't chasing revenge, I was chasing excellence. And deep down, I knew, the better I became, the more his empire would start to crumble. Once I started rebuilding, the momentum became addictive. Every morning, I'd wake up before sunrise, make the cheapest coffee imaginable, and dive straight into work. No fancy office, no assistants, just me, my laptop, and a stack of ideas waiting to be reborn. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I registered a new company named True North Creative. It felt symbolic, a direction I could trust, one that no one could steal. My first hire was a young designer I met through a local freelance forum. She reminded me of myself back then, hungry, creative, and naive enough to believe in good people. Together, we built campaigns that had heart, not just polish. Clients noticed. One afternoon, I got an email that made me freeze. It was from one of Evolve Media's biggest clients. The subject line read, "We'd like to discuss a potential switch." They'd grown tired of missed deadlines and shallow results. I didn't even need to pitch. My reputation was quietly rebuilding itself. As new projects poured in, I started renting a small office again. This one had sunlight, clean walls, and a sense of renewal. My team grew to 5, then 10. We weren't rich, but we were proud. And more importantly, we were honest. One evening, after a long day, I looked around the office and realized something. This was what I'd always wanted. Not just success, but peace. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's loyalty. Still, I couldn't ignore the whispers spreading through the industry, rumors that Evolve Media was slipping. Clients leaving, deadlines missed, investors uneasy. I didn't celebrate, but I couldn't help the small, quiet smile that crept across my face, because for the first time, it felt like karma had started to notice. The shift came slowly, like watching a tide turn one wave at a time. I started hearing things, whispers from clients, vendors, and freelancers who'd once been loyal to Evolve Media. Ethan's company was cracking. Missed payments, overworked staff, investors pulling out. His charm, the thing that used to dazzle everyone, was starting to fade. One afternoon, I got a call from an old contact, someone who used to be on Ethan's payroll. "You didn't hear this from me," she said, lowering her voice, "but Evolve's falling apart. Ethan's been cutting corners and blaming everyone but himself." I didn't feel triumphant, just calm, like the universe was finally catching up. While he was busy chasing image and expansion, I was quietly building integrity. Clients began reaching out, saying things like, "We left Evolve, heard you're the real deal." Each email felt like poetic justice. Then came the call that changed everything. A major investor, someone who'd poured thousands into Evolve Media, reached out to me. "I remember your name from the early days," he said. "We're reconsidering our partnerships. Would you be open to a conversation?" My pulse quickened. The same investors who once dismissed me as the background guy now wanted me. We met at a high-end restaurant I couldn't have afforded a year ago. The investor leaned in and said, "Ethan's leadership has become unstable. If you ever consider expanding, We'd rather back someone with integrity. That word integrity hit me harder than any check ever could. As I left that meeting, the city lights reflected off the glass buildings around me, each one a reminder of how far I'd fallen and how far I'd climbed back. The tide wasn't just turning, it was finally in my favor. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, the day Ethan called me out of the blue. I hadn't heard his voice in over a year, but I recognized that forced confidence instantly. "Hey man," he said lightly. "Long time, huh? Thought maybe we could grab a drink, talk things out." Every instinct told me not to, but curiosity won. We met at a downtown bar, the same place we'd celebrated our first client win years ago. He looked different now. The shine was gone from his eyes, his tailored suit hanging loose like it didn't belong to him anymore. He ordered whiskey, like old times, but his hands trembled when he lifted the glass. "Listen," he started. "Things have been rough. Investors bailed. Clients are pulling out. I just need a little help, maybe some referrals. We can rebuild together." I stared at him, trying to recognize the man I once trusted. "You stole everything from me," I said quietly. "Why would I ever help you?" He exhaled sharply, mask slipping. "You think you're better than me now," he sapped. "You got lucky, that's all. You'd be nothing without me." That was when I smiled, not out of arrogance, but clarity. "No, Ethan, you'd be nothing without me." The next day, I got a message from one of his former employees, a young analyst who jumped ship. "Figured you should know," she said, sending over screenshots of internal chaos, unpaid salaries, lawsuits, and a leaked email showing Ethan forging client data. I didn't release the evidence. I didn't have to. Within weeks, the story hit local business blogs. Evolved Media accused of fraudulent practices. Ethan tried to reach me again, desperate this time, but I'd already blocked his number. His empire was collapsing, and all I had to do was watch. The downfall came faster than even I expected. Once the story broke, Evolved Media imploded almost overnight. Clients withdrew contracts. Employees resigned en masse. The company's social media pages were flooded with angry comments and accusations. Ethan's carefully polished image shattered in real time. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post or gloat. I just watched quietly, the same way you watch a storm you once tried to survive. My team at True North Creative kept their heads down, working through projects as usual. But deep down, every success, every satisfied client felt like a silent vindication. One afternoon, I got an email from a journalist covering the scandal. "You used to work with Ethan, right?" she wrote. "Care to comment?" I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time before replying. "No comment. Just wish him well." The truth was, I didn't wish him anything. I just didn't care anymore. A few weeks later, I heard that Ethan's office lease had been terminated. His staff had reported him for unpaid wages, and one of his investors was suing for fraud. The company that once stole everything from me was officially dead. I passed by his old building one evening out of curiosity. The logo that once gleamed on the front door had been scraped off, leaving only faint glue marks behind. Through the glass, I could see dust gathering where desks used to be. It was eerie, like walking through the ghost of my own past. For the first time, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. What used to be pain had turned into perspective. Ethan had burned everything he built, and all I had to do was stay true to who I was. He tried to bury me, but all he did was plant me. A year after Ethan's downfall, I stood in my new office, sunlight streaming across clean white walls, laughter echoing from my team in the next room. The same space that once felt like a battlefield now radiated peace. I wasn't just running a company anymore. I was running a legacy that came from pain, rebuilt with purpose. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about Ethan, not with anger, but with quiet disbelief, how someone so talented could be so consumed by greed. I used to imagine confronting him, demanding an apology, but now the thought just made me sigh. I'd already won the only victory that mattered: peace. One afternoon, I stopped by a small CAF downtown, the one where Ethan and I had first dreamed this whole thing up. The table was still there, the same corner seat with the cracked vinyl cushion. I ordered a coffee and opened my notebook, jotting ideas for a mentorship program, something to help young entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes I once made. As I wrote, I realized something profound. I didn't lose a business partner. I lost an illusion. Trust isn't built on charm or shared goals, it's built on character. And sometimes betrayal is just life's brutal way of removing the wrong people from your story before leaving. I walked past the old building that once held Evolved Media. The space was empty now. Police sign hanging crookedly on the door. I smiled, not out of spite, but closure. The ghost was gone. People think betrayal breaks you. It doesn't, it refines you. It burns away your weakness until all that's left is truth. Ethan tried to erase me from my own story, but instead, he made me the author of a better one.